All right, welcome everyone to this week's episode of Firepunk Friday. Excited about the episode this week. We're going to be joined by John Mellon and should have a lot of good stuff to talk about. Before we get into talking with John, I figured we'd just take a few minutes to remember and send our condolences to the James Van Ness family and to the Mike Skinner family. Just over the past couple weeks, there's been a number of deaths and accidents. There's been some local accidents here of young men that one of our friends got paralyzed, and another one, a young fellow, committed suicide. And it just kind of got me to thinking, we're in this diesel industry and we're always being big macho. You see a lot of bantering online, and we like to do our share of bantering and have fun with each other. But going through these last few weeks and seeing this just kind of reminded me how we're never promised tomorrow. So make sure that you are kind to those that you interact with, and just hug your loved ones a little bit tighter and make sure they know that you love them. And we just want to send out our condolences and just know that our thoughts are with the James Van Ness family and the Mike Skinner family. Just if there's anything that we can do for you guys, just know that we love you. And if there's anything we can do, make sure you let us know. So with that being said, we'll get into talking with John, and here's our conversation with him. All right, we have got the bearded one, John Mellon, with us tonight. What's going on, John?
Same old, man. Just another Monday out of 5. So,
yep. Another Monday out of 5. I hear you. Yeah. So, how's things going at Mensker? You guys pretty busy?
It's pretty busy. For the time of year that we're going into, it typically slows down right now because everybody's racing. Uh-huh. Kids are out of school doing, summer vacation stuff. So, yeah. It'll slow down a little bit, and then it'll pick back up probably around August whenever kids go back to school and all that stuff. So.
Yeah. So let's start out. Let's talk about you for a little bit. You are the big, majestic, bearded one that's, I don't know, half the face of Mensker, or I don't know. If people call Mensker, you're typically the one they talk to. Tell me a little bit about your job and what you do for Mensker.
Yeah, I've worked for Mark for, I think it's, 2016, so about 6 years now. Yeah, I would say before I started working for him, I knew a lot of people in the small tire racing deal. Like, that's obviously our bread and butter. As far as the face, Mark definitely flies under the radar whenever he can. But I'm a hard face to forget. Craig's the man behind the scenes. He's like the man who builds everything. Without Craig, Matt and Rick, like, those are the 3 guys that build everything right now. So yeah, Craig's been with Mark since, I don't even know when. He's probably been with Mark for like 10 years now, mm-hmm. 10, 11 years. And yeah, it's a growing business. Mark just hired in another kid named Jalen to do chassis evaluations with him and do some machining work. So slowly but surely, it's definitely still growing. Knocking out small projects here and there, but shocks still do the same thing: slow down, speed up suspension. So that's what we're doing. So
yeah, so you get the fun job of talking to everybody when they call with the crazy questions, and the diesel guys when they bug you, they want to make their big heavy truck go fast. Yep. Tell me, you've got a little bit of diesel history. Yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
Yep. I am from the home of diesel extravaganza. I'm from Terre Haute, so mm-hmm. The beginning of Shy Diesel I remember those memories. I've always just been surrounded by diesel, being back home and now down here and doing the motorsport stuff. Started off with Ryan Milliken for a while on the Green Nova, him and Daniel, and then you guys got on board with the S10, and out of those two vehicles, the S10 and the Green Nova, that's like I feel like the very high points in diesel racing.
Yeah.
As far as drag racing goes, the Rudy's guys, we were on board with those guys too whenever they were doing the 2-wheel drive truck and the 4-wheel drive truck. Basically anything diesel that I can think of. There's a lot of companies or a lot of cars or trucks that we've been involved with. The late Brian Gray, we were on his truck as well. Yeah, that's a tough one there. But yeah, he was another customer, and
Right.
as far as the diesel stuff goes, like Ben Shaddy's stuff, we've always been on his trucks for cars now, and yeah, it's a smaller market, you know that,
Right.
but it definitely definitely a good market.
Yeah.
Love seeing it progress.
Right.
And I don't think it slows down any at all at this point. So
yeah, no, I definitely think, I mean, as far as the fast or the top end of diesel, I kind of feel in a way we're just getting started. We've learned a lot in the last what's it been now, 4 years that we've been trying to do the big tire thing, I think. And I guess doing some radial stuff as well. So we've definitely learned a lot, but I think we're finally maybe trying to get away from some of our dumb diesel ways and learning more that the vehicle doesn't care that much that it's a diesel or a gas. And even though we're RPM limited and we're kind of handicapped in some of those ways, we're finding more and more that a lot of the same rules apply. So yeah, I don't know. It's been a learning experience. Obviously there's a lot of different things that have to work together, and you coming from the suspension side, that, and then we kind of think our engine has to do certain things, and just figuring out how to make it all work together has been an interesting deal. But we'll come back to the diesel stuff and talking suspension and whatever here after a bit. But tell me a little bit real quick, just the Mensker story. Mark obviously is the owner there, and tell me a little bit how he got into drag racing and how he got into doing shocks.
Okay. So Mark got started in shocks because he was racing dirt late models back in probably like 08, 09 ish. Had his own late model team. And Mark is a very self-sufficient kind of person as far as if he can do something in-house, then he will. If he can innovate, he will. As far as doing his own shocks, whenever it comes to dirt late models, it's basically shocks and a chassis and a motor, and they don't work on motors. So those guys work on suspension, and that's about it. That's the key to that to programs over there in dirt late modeling is the suspension. So if you can't get what you exactly want, or you want to play with something, you need to do it on your own. So he started doing shocks and working on his own shocks for that stuff. And then there's no money in really making any shocks for dirt late models and stuff like that. So it moved over to, selling shocks to drag racing. Got involved with the AFCO guys and started going to small tire racing. At the time was kind of starting to blow up. Stevie Fast Jackson, his orange Mustang, Kevin Fiskus with his Mustang. There's a couple other guys in there that were OGs in starting the small tire stuff with Mark and shocks, and basically just snowballed into a profession and a business and building shocks.
So I would be correct in saying that he brought his dirt track suspension mentality to the small tire racing with the whole thing of separating the chassis and the rear, correct?
If you can make traction on dirt, you can make traction on pavement by doing the same thing, separation. driving the tire in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
The tire loved it at the time. It was just the meeting of two worlds, really. The tire technology of the radial and the evolution of that, and then taking a small bit of dirt late model racing and transferring that over into some drag racing. And if you can make traction on dirt by separation, pinion angle, bar angle, then you can make traction on surfaces like we race on now, glued up stuff. So.
Yeah. No, it's pretty cool. It was really eye-opening to me when we got into the radial world, like just learning how some of that stuff works. I still don't fully understand everything, obviously. I mean, 4 links is one of those things that it seems like you can race for years and you're still learning. And there definitely seems to be different approaches to go on about it. But yeah, so you guys got your start in small tire, and now more recently, you guys have been just as successful in big tire stuff. Your shocks are starting to appear on more and more big tire vehicles. I know that you guys are working with some of the guys over in PDRA. I believe Justin Swanstrom runs your stuff. Manny Bajinga. Fletcher, well, Fletcher Cox. I don't know. Does he run that on a big tire vehicle or just on small tire stuff?
The big tire car that Nova Joe ended up in a wreck in, yes, it did.
Yeah.
It also had our stuff.
Yeah. So more and more you guys are making your way into the big tire stuff. Is that becoming a pretty big segment of your sales, or is that still kind of a growing thing?
Yeah, it's starting to grow, kind of starting to snowball. Because for the longest time, the small tire radial stuff, for a while there, they were door cars. They were in its infancy. They were door cars. RVW cars were cars that started out as actual cars and rolled off a production line. Now, with the evolution, they've grown into pro mods, and that just kind of lended to the big tire stuff, because there's not a lot of radial tire racing anymore as much. I mean, there's still quite a bit, but not as much as you can go and race a pro mod. Like you can go race a 36-inch tire pro mod anywhere across the country. Neo PMA, Midwest Pro Mod Series, NMCA, PDRA. There's a lot more of the pro mod stuff available to race at, and it just lended to moving in that direction as far as starting to get on bigger tire, big tire cars. And it honestly got to the point with radial versus the world cars that they're all pro mods, or mostly pro mods with small tires on them. Same 4 links, different 4-link settings, but same 4-link geometry and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the guys that you see running at the front of RVW, most of those guys will swap to a big tire and go racing all summer when they're not on radials. It's not quite that easy, unfortunately, but they haven't figured out how to do it, and are able to switch back and forth fairly easily, or I don't know if you'd say easily, but
it's I mean, you had firsthand with going back and forth between tires, so they are 2 totally different animals. The radial is it is, for as small as it is, it can definitely take a beating. 34.5 Hoosiers, 36-inch Hoosiers, still a really good tire. Can do quite a bit with them. But it definitely, I feel like personally, the slick tire stuff, it requires a little bit more tire management versus the radial stuff. I feel like we rely more on the track prep for the radial stuff. But as far as the big tire stuff, I feel like it's going to start growing even more than it already has. I feel like even the slick small tire stuff, 28s, 29s, like I think with PDRA's got a small tire class now, 28-inch slick tire class. I think you're going to see some X275 guys come over and try and run it. I think that's just the way that the industry is kind of moving towards trying to tailor towards small tire stuff. But
right,
as far as slicks and the slick stuff is, you can race it in the heat. You can race it. I mean, you can still race radials in the heat too, but it's just that the slick is a little more forgiving.
Yeah, right. No, I don't know. I mean, it's definitely changed a lot in the last couple of years with the radial tire stuff. The Ducks races were the show every year, a freak show, I guess you would say, a home run derby. And I think everybody saw what was happening with that and tried to capitalize on it. And I almost feel like some of the adding a lot more events to it kind of took some of the specialness away from it. And it seems like it's kind of moving back towards like everybody's primary, racing is going to be done on a big tire, but let's, bolt the radials up once or twice a year and let's go see how fast we can go. So I think that's kind of our idea with the new ride. Obviously it's going to be primarily a big tire car, but I love going radial tire racing. We have a ton of fun every time we do it, but then I also see how much time the tractors spend on the track and all that stuff that's not near as much fun for the crowd. So that's where the big tire and even especially the no prep stuff really has a big stronghold on the market, is because it's a lot easier to keep everybody's short attention span.
Yeah.
Yep. So
I can only walk so far for a hot dog.
Right. Unless somebody comes up with, like, I don't know, a tractor that can do fancy, cool tricks while they're dragging the track, then I don't think people are going to stay in the stands, watching the tractor running up and down the track 100 times. So,
no.
Yeah.
No. If anybody was going to figure out how to get a tractor to do that, though, it'd either be Jimmy Bradshaw, Tyler Crossnow, or like Kurt Johnson. Those three guys need to get together and figure out what to do with the tractor.
Like put like a rolling fireworks display on the tractor or something.
Yeah, something.
Or like, something. I don't know, turn it into a betting game or, something crazy like that.
Yeah. I don't know what. Make it like a dice game of some sort. I don't know. You got to do something. Yeah. But
so I've got a couple of a radio show I used to listen to always did a Would You Rather segment. So I've got a couple I just have two questions, but I figured it would generate a little bit of conversation. So the first one, would you rather shave your beard or not go bowling for a year?
Oh man. Well, that's a tough one, man. Because I'm super competitive whenever it oh man. I would probably say shave my beard, because I'm super competitive. I can grow another one back.
Right, exactly. I mean, I figured it'd take about a year to grow a decent beard back. You probably can't grow that back in a year, at least if you can.
Oh no, no. This is probably about 3 years and going now.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm super competitive. I can't give up bowling. This year was the first year in a league of bowling, and I'm addicted to that. I went from
bowling every week, huh?
Yeah. I went from having one bowling ball to having I think I've got 8 now. So
you're probably trying shock oil out on your bowling ball or something, or
I'm trying.
It's probably not quite how that works.
No, I need to get with Kurt Johnson or Tyler or somebody with glue, because I need to figure out how to get more traction in this thing. So, I don't have a lot of rev rate with my hand here.
Yeah.
This isn't going to cut it. So.
Yeah. So the next one's a little more racing related, and I actually stole this one from the West Buck show. But would you rather ban wheelie bars or ban glue and track prep? Now, the rest of your life, no more wheelie bars or no more track prep. Which would you
Oh,
rather do without?
boy, that's a tough one because you got to think about it. Like, no more track prep, no more glue
Mhm.
means no more radial tire racing.
Well,
But
you could go radial tire racing if you ban the
it's gonna
wheelie
be
bars.
slow.
No, you'd still, well, yeah, I guess
Yeah, if you ban
you're
wheelie bars,
right.
then you've gotten to the point where you can't run big. I mean, you can't run big slicks anymore. So you inherently have to race on glued up surfaces. So,
Mhm.
hmm, would I ban glue or would I ban wheelie bars? Um, can I ban glue during the summertime and then and then bring it back like spring fall and then like bring the wheelie bars back like during the summertime?
Yeah, I don't think that's how this one works,
No,
but
I would, if I had to do either or, I would ban wheelie bars
ban
because,
wheelie bars. Ooh,
yeah, I would ban wheelie bars because
I don't know that I
I'm,
can get on board with that one. I don't know.
sorry.
So you want to ban wheelie bars and just watch the tractor, do track prep the rest of your life and get half as much racing in, huh?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I'll lay in this grave. I said it. I'll ban
That's
wheelie
all right.
bars.
That's all right. It's not a bad choice, I
Yeah,
guess. So yeah,
I came from small
you
tire
came from
racing,
yeah.
so
That makes
yeah,
sense. So
yeah. The
yeah,
one thing I would ban though is I'd ban that if I didn't have to ban either one, I'd ban that mono wheelie bar. God, those
really
mono wheelie bars are oh, they're so tough. I had to
drives you.
talk
Yeah.
with a guy today about them,
Uh-huh.
and like he just he loved it, and he
Hmm.
loved his mono wheelie bar, and I'm just like, dude, like you can't put any stagger in it, you
Can't
can't
steer
make
the
it drive,
car. Yeah.
you can't steer the car with it. I'm just like,
Right.
ugh, that's a
Yeah.
pain.
I hear you.
Um, I would ban that one.
You
Yeah,
fair enough. I
I
heard
would ban
that.
that one today. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, enough with the stupid questions. We'll go back to talking real things, I guess. But
Okay.
so let's talk a little bit about more, I guess, real world diesel things in relation to shocks and you guys. Um, a question I get asked quite a bit is why would I buy Mensker shocks rather than going to Summit and buying a pair of AFCOs or a pair of QA1s? What makes your guys' shocks different from those, especially in
Okay.
relation to trucks?
Mm, it's pretty easy actually for me. So it's more than just shocks. Um, it's not just the shock. Like it's understanding what you're needing the tire to do, what kind of racing surface you're on, what kind of, you know, just there's so many things else that go into the shock and what to do with it as opposed to just buying one off the shelf. Yeah, if you bought one off the shelf and you knew what was inside of it, and you knew what you were trying to achieve, then um, you'd be fine. But
Mhm.
if you are looking for a company that can provide you with a shock, can provide you with knowledge as far as, you know, let's put 4 link here or do this with a ladder bar or um, you know, provide you with technical support and direction with what you're going to want to achieve with the shock and what the shock needs to do for you.
Mhm.
It's more than just shocks. It's understanding gear ratios, it's understanding tire sizes, you know, it's
Mhm.
just there's a whole plethora of things that come together whenever you know, buy a pair of our shocks, that you don't get from, you know, buying an off the shelf shock. You know, I don't know what the technical support is at
Right.
AFCO or QA1 or anybody else, but I just know that what we provide is understanding of a whole car as opposed to just
Right.
giving you a shock and here's some settings and good luck.
Yeah. Well, so I guess part of my understanding on that whole thing is so let's take a dual adjustable shock where you can adjust
Hmm.
compression and you can adjust extension.
Most
Mhm.
everybody's like, well, it's an adjustable shock, so what's it matter whether I get this brand, or what's it matter what brand I get? But what they don't
Mhm.
realize is there's still just their range of adjustment. And if that
Mhm.
range of adjustment isn't anywhere close to where you need to be for the weight of your vehicle or the power of your vehicle, um, that adjustment really doesn't do you any good, because you're way out in left field
Mhm.
and you're not
Yep.
getting the rate of extension or compression that you need.
Nope. Yep. You nailed it. Um, if the shock is not tailored towards the vehicle, like I'm not going to give somebody, I'm not going to put an Ultra Street car on a pair of radial versus a World shocks. I'm not going
Mhm.
to put a pair of shocks that we build for a mud dragster on a diesel truck that's 4-wheel drive, just because they're
Mhm.
both 4-wheel drive. Like it's not. There's two totally different scenarios there going on. So, um, yeah, you nailed it. Yeah, double adjustable.
Mhm.
Well, there's only so much range, like you said, in the shock.
Right.
Um, some shock companies have a absolute amazing amount of huge amount of range, but that means each adjustment in that shock is going to be very dramatic.
Mhm.
There are other shock companies out there who have shocks that don't move hardly at all as far as force numbers go. Um, and if that shock is not spot on with the valving, then you're pissing in the wind. You're gonna have a hard time.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, yeah, we could go into a whole depth of,
Right.
this shock does that, this shock does this, but
Mhm.
just
Yeah,
there are.
it's a little bit tough for me to know how in depth to go with some of this stuff, because we could go on for a long
Oh
time
yeah.
explaining it all. And like, I want to talk, I mean, I've learned more and more about how all literally the entire vehicle has to work together for, especially when we're talking higher horsepower two-wheel drive stuff. Like,
Oh yeah.
the way you apply power, your tire pressure, your wheelie bar setting, your four link setting, there's so many things that all work together. Your shift points. I mean, yeah, there's just so
Shift
much.
points,
Right.
torque converter. Torque
Yeah.
converter
Torque
is
converter. Yeah.
torque converter and gear ratios are
Yep.
the one thing that are sometimes the most underlooked part of a
Hmm.
vehicle. Like,
Yeah.
um,
And
solely the torque converter.
I think in the diesel world, that's extremely the truth. Is the torque
Hmm.
converter is a very overlooked thing, and a lot of that I think comes from the torque the bolt together torque converter isn't super readily available for a lot of diesel applications if you're still on a 48 RE, or an actual diesel transmission. So it's a lot
Hmm.
harder for guys to make those switches. And um, a lot of the converter companies in the diesel industry aren't um, hardcore drag racers and don't necessarily know what RPM flash it needs or that kind of stuff. And that's stuff we started to learn a lot, just that the radial tire racing kind of forced our hand into learning some of that. And it's still something that we're feeling our way through, um, figuring out how all of that exactly works. But yeah, that's definitely a good point. Like, the torque converter can make a big difference. And there's so many variables. Like, you'll see guys out there talking about, oh, well, I cut this 60 foot with this tire and this shock. And well, you're telling me like an eighth of the equation. And
Hmm.
it's so hard to compare from vehicle to vehicle. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Four-wheel drive diesels are a whole different kind of can of worms that I'm not
Oh yeah.
sure that I fully. Um, Sometimes I wonder if I'm much more comfortable with them than what I was 5 years ago. Like, definitely have learned some things, but man, going back to trying to make a four-wheel drive going fast definitely challenges me and makes me kind of think through some of the mechanics of it again and see if I can figure out how to make this thing work.
I honestly think that in the 4-wheel drive stuff, I don't know. I'm not in tune enough in the circles to know like where the progression is being made in
Hmm.
in the 4-wheel drive stuff. But if I had to put my finger on it, I would say it's probably what we just brought up, torque converter.
Right.
I don't think it's anything in the suspension
Mhm.
that's going to take the four-wheel drive platform, at least for you guys, any further.
Mhm.
I think it's all going to boil down to power management and the torque converter.
Yeah.
You guys can make all the power in the world, but it's that thing in between the engine and the transmission that is super critical.
No.
Um, I think I know we talk about four link in the back of the four wheel drive trucks and all that stuff. Every single
Mhm.
time it seems like one goes out, or you're going to play with it,
Right.
especially for the UCC. Right before UCC, I know we talked about four
Yeah.
link and what you could do to play with it on the four wheel drive stuff, but um, I honestly think that it's mostly power management and torque converter there. I don't think it's
Right.
anything in the suspension we're missing right now. Um, Stick the tire as hard as you can and try and drive off with it.
Mhm. Yeah.
I remember I remember saying that to you, and just try to get it to stick it as hard as you can.
Right. No, I definitely I agree with that for the most part. I know I've seen some trucks recently. Well, we fought at some in Justin's truck, just getting past that, I guess, lockup stage, the 100-foot stage.
It,
It's really
it
hard
can
if,
upset it.
yeah, right. And Tony Burkhart, the DHD Chevy four-wheel drive truck, I know
Mm-hmm.
we've kind of helped them a good bit the last year going over logs. They have, while they're a Duramax and we're Cummins, they run all Exergy, from fuel to the Bosch setup. So all of their data and all that stuff is, very similar to ours. And Levon's familiar with the Bosch, so we've helped them quite a bit on that. And just looking at that converter, looking at its efficiency, and then going to lockup, like that converter was so inefficient, it was nearly impossible to bring lockup in because the drop was so big. Um,
Oof.
it would just upset the tire every time you turned it on. So they're looking, or actually, I think they're in the process of changing converters right now. So we're definitely learning a lot about converters recently. We've tried some different things. I know after doing radial tire, um, we tried to leave that stator in our converter to go big tire racing. And it turns out at the weight of our vehicle and with the big tire and the way the gearing and everything was, it just simply didn't have enough leverage um, to move the truck before lockup that it needed. So
Mm-hmm.
like the previous year, we were able to maintain like 3 Gs before lockup. And
Mm-hmm.
after like using the radial tire stator, we could only see about 2.5 Gs. Even if we turned the power up, it didn't seem to matter what we did. It was going to max out at that until we turned lockup on. So that we kind of knew we were too loose. But then we also, the whole idea of converter flash, that was a very, or RPM flash off the line, and having a loose enough converter to do that, that was a fairly new concept to us, going to the radial tire racing. But that's pretty much, you look at any kind of race car, high horsepower race car, they're going to have a converter in there to where RPMs can flash coming off the line. You can actually get your RPMs up in your engine to where the engine can do work and it can get up there and make power without transferring all of that power to the tire. And the torque converter can gobble some of that up and not rip the tire loose too much. And then once it gets into the higher RPMs, the torque converter needs to become enough efficient at high RPMs to where your drop to lockup isn't crazy much. So that's some of the stuff we've learned. Obviously, more of the street truck applications. That's probably um, in over your head, at least more than what you have data
Oh yeah.
available. I think we can still learn things from the race trucks that we can hand down to know what direction to go with um, some of the street truck kind of stuff. But that's probably a little bit more of a torque converter conversation, I guess, than a shock conversation. But
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not.
no,
I got off on a
yeah,
tangent.
I have to talk to the guys at Neil Chance sometimes, and I actually had a chance to visit them the other week and had a good talk with Doug over there. And just yeah, the amount of technology, just the knowledge that goes into it when you work with a lot of, race converters every year, and knowing what you can change with a pump and a turbine and a stator and how they all affect different things is definitely um, a lot to learn there, and a lot of progress we can make on stuff. So
I think the
uh
one thing that hasn't been used though yet that needs to be explored, clutches.
really.
Get rid of the torque converter and try a clutch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but
I mean,
I think there's something
yeah,
there.
there could
Hmm.
be. So you're putting a clutch, like say you've got a big, I don't know, Justin Ziegler's truck, for instance. So
Hmm.
we've got a clutch, or what are we putting behind it? A Lenco or a tire?
Probably I would say
Putting a Liberty behind it, like,
Liberty.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yep. Yep.
So
You could
what?
do
I
a
mean,
Liberty with like a. You could do a Liberty.
mhm,
I think with the vast amount of tunability in a clutch, you still get tunability out of the torque converter with changing stators and
mhm,
dumps and all that stuff. But
right.
I think there's something there with a clutch that it's not that it offers any more of a competitive advantage. I feel like over the torque converter in end all be all
Mhm,
states, but as far as making changes in tunability, I feel like the clutch is um, a little more friendly towards that.
yeah.
I got a buddy that races in the Southeast Gassers Association, and just seeing him run his stick shift car, like
Mhm,
the amount of changes and how quickly he can make them with a clutch
right.
is amazing. So
So would you know that the Shide rail actually still runs a clutch?
I figured so.
Yeah.
Ever since the day that thing's been born and Bo was driving it before Jared,
Hmm.
um, I remember it being
Yeah.
clutched and like, yeah, that thing
I
is
guess
serious.
my big question would be is like on our modern ECM controlled vehicles with
Mhm.
the boost that a diesel takes, like how do you get enough load on it to make the boost, like a lot of modern race cars with a clutch in it would be nitrous cars or supercharged cars, would they not? Like, do they run turbo cars on it with a clutch?
Um, there's a few of them.
Mhm.
One that sticks out in my mind right now is the Titan Supra,
Okay.
orange
Hmm.
X275 car, um, clutch car. Uh, Seems to have absolutely no
So
problem with it.
they pretty
But then
much
again, you got to
just
think.
free rev it to get the turbos going. I mean, or they have a
Uh,
way
you
of
can.
like slip the clutch a little bit to load the turbo, or to load it to get
There's
turbo boost up.
ways. Yeah, there's ways to manipulate it enough to get it to build boost.
Hmm.
As far as what they do specifically, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But it does take quite a bit of knowledge to run. I feel like the clutch stuff to have a grasp of it. I'm not saying we need to rip the
Yeah. No.
the transmit the turbo 400 out of the S10 and put it in the new car and make it a clutch.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
it would be cool if there was a Liberty behind the Cummins, you
Well,
know.
that's kind of in the plans already. So I'm pretty
Yeah,
excited about trying that. Yeah, it's definitely going to have its learning curve, but the whole idea of the Liberty and everything on paper seems to really make sense there. So um,
yep.
if
Still a
it
torque
does,
converter though.
yeah, still torque converter. Yep.
Yep,
So
yep.
we'll give that a shot and see how that goes. But
Yeah.
at least we can say we tried it then if it doesn't work. But yeah, I think we can figure it out. It seems to kind of make sense. But yeah, what
I
as
don't even.
far as, or go ahead.
I was gonna say I don't even know what we were talking about before. We were just
Oh.
going off on the and
just
Connor cut this part out. Yeah, we just zoomed right off there. I don't even remember what the question was now.
here comes the clutch rabbit trail.
Yeah, the clutch rabbit hole we go to this way, and then the torque converter hole already started. And just,
all right, so we'll go back to another question. As far as I get a number of guys asking me with 2-wheel drive diesels, they want to go fast. Is there any, and when I say 2-wheel drive diesels, I'm talking daily driver trucks that are, who knows, probably 75% front weight bias, and they have leaf springs in the back and they're a long bed standard cab. Like, is there any prayer of making a truck like that that's so front end heavy hook up remotely well? Aside from shortening it up a little bit and maybe putting a 4-link under it or something like that?
well, it depends on some things. So, like, if you're talking like purpose built, kind of like a regular cab short bed, full size truck. No. Okay. If you're talking like
yeah,
street,
right. No, I'm not talking
okay,
purpose, but I'm talking like a street truck, like your truck.
like my truck. Okay, so if I was to take my truck and try to make more traction, which is a 2-wheel drive 03 quad cab short bed truck, you could try Firepunk traction bars. That would definitely help. Good set of shocks to try and keep the truck from trying to wheel hop so bad. Nobody really makes, I don't think, a leaf spring pack that's kind of designed for racing.
Right.
But you would want to try to potentially try to get the leaf spring to store some energy. You could put some pinion angle in it, maybe play with some shims underneath with the leaf spring to create some more pinion angle, because pinion angle is going to create some traction.
And you're talking, you'd be talking negative pinion angle, like trying to get
negative pinion angle
down. Yep.
Try and get a little bit more pinion angle in it, which is going to, like I said, try and drive the tire a little harder into the ground. What else could you do?
I'm kind of thinking like you throw a couple 100 pounds right inside the tailgate. Is that a horrible idea? I mean, being as you have a super front heavy truck that you're never really going to get the weight that far back. And I really don't think these trucks care that much about a couple 100 pounds, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. I mean, you could try, putting some weight in the back of the truck. You could try and put some weight on the actual housing itself. The housings typically in these street trucks are pretty heavy anyways. Trying to think what else you could do. Basically, a little bit of shock stuff, a little bit of traction bar stuff, a little pinion angle, good tire. Put a good tire underneath it. Don't expect any traction out of your all season mud terrains or anything like that. You need to get something with like a 100 tread wear to maybe a 200 tread wear tire. Anything radial, 315. Well, you can't probably fit a 315 or something like that. Nobody makes a really.
Well, the problem with the 315 is it's a 15-inch
that too
wheel, and you can't do that on most of these big dumb diesel 8-lug things.
yeah. Typically, probably 16-inch wheel is probably as small as I would think you could go.
Yeah, wheels get to be a real challenge with these trucks, because to get any kind of or for the most part, to get a really good race wheel, you got to have a 15 or a 16-inch wheel to get a slick of any sort. Now, radials, you have a few more options, but you're still relatively limited to what you can get. You can get some about 31-inch tall is about the tallest you can seem to find in a radial, so that works. But it definitely gets interesting when you have 8 lugs and you can't fit a 16-inch, and 17 is about the smallest that you can put on most of these trucks without doing brake modifications. So a lot of guys that want to get serious about getting a decent tire under their trucks are starting out with, getting brakes on it so that they can fit the wheels that they need to get the tires that they want. So it's kind of a nice little can of worms that you open to try to get a decent tire underneath some of these things. So
no, the tire is very key. Good set of traction bars, a little extra pinion angle. a good shock to try and keep it from trying to wheel hop so bad, which would destroy the back end. I mean, the truck would be
Right.
very upset if it started wheel hopping. And the other part of it would be management. As far as power management goes, you know, that's the biggest thing is just understand is getting power management, somehow to manage the power in this thing, whether it's
Right.
a progressive nitrous system or something like that, to be able to progress how much power it's making. Because stock ECU trucks, I don't know, they're not tailored to
No.
control power like we do with like you said, the Bosch stuff, or any of the Fuel Tech or Holly stuff that we normally deal with. Like
Right.
everything's time based
Mm-hmm.
versus just power. You know, making as much power as you can.
Yeah.
So power management would probably be kind of a thing that would be the hardest thing to deal with.
Right.
As far
Especially.
as front shock, front spring, you could put a lighter spring up front to try and store some energy, get the front end moving. But yeah, I would say.
I'm glad you mentioned springs. I was going to mention that and kind of would have forgotten about it had you not said that. But talk a little bit about stored energy in a spring, like when you want to use a heavy spring versus a light spring. That was a little bit educational last month when I was asking you about a light spring with, you know, radials versus you typically would want a heavier spring if you're running a big tire. Am I correct? Or talk that theory through a little bit.
So there is a window at which a spring is happy as far as stored energy. You can put obviously too light of a spring on a vehicle and it just doesn't pick it up or doesn't move it. You can put a too heavy of a spring on a vehicle and it just rides on top of the spring, only compresses about an inch, doesn't really do much of anything. But there is a happy median at which the spring has enough stored energy in it to do what you're trying to achieve with it, whether it's a front spring that you're trying to store some extra energy in to get the front end moving, or it's a rear spring where you're trying to drive a radial tire into the ground, or it's a heavier rear, kind of a heavy, what I would consider heavy rear spring, for like slick tire racing, because we're obviously not trying to store a mega ton of energy in the spring to drive a big slick in the ground and upset it. So stored energy in a spring, typical spring rates are in poundage. So it takes, typical rule of thumb on how it's all calculated is, say a 500-pound spring, it takes 1 inch to compress that spring 500 pounds to compress that spring 1 inch. So then, you know, it's whenever you're trying to figure out what kind of spring rates to put underneath cars, trucks, you know, it's some math involved as far as being able to understand, okay, well, you know, we want to store so much energy in the spring. You know, we need to make sure it's not too heavy, but can still get the ride height. You know, there's a lot of interesting things behind springs.
I just would have never associated a lighter spring storing more energy than a heavier spring, but kind of seems to make sense. So the lighter spring actually compresses further. So if you're trying to separate someone's suspension, it can actually help drive that apart further. You know, you're not going to go if you're only compressed an inch, it can only help extend it for an inch. But if that thing's compressed 6 inches, it can help extend it for 6 inches. So definitely just a little bit different from how I had ever processed that in my simple head. But yeah, so that was kind of eye-opening to me. But
what would really mess you up is whenever you take two springs and you put them together and they fight against each other, it makes a lighter spring. And that'll be on my next TED talk. So,
yeah,
two
I
heavy
might.
springs make light spring crazy.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense, but yeah, we won't go
It
down
won't.
that rabbit trail.
No,
Yeah.
no, no.
So talk to me about suspension, gospel versus theory. So I guess pretty much what I'm
Okay.
saying here is I think in my head,
I got one for you.
yeah.
I got a good one for you.
Yeah, just pretty much what I was thinking here was like in my head when I started doing 4-link stuff, like there's one way, these are the rules, this is the way to do it. But the more I learn about this, the more I'm learning that there's, I don't know, about as many different ways to skin a cat as there is different race cars. Obviously, a lot of the same rules apply, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of different ways of going about it. And I guess with that, like, are you able to use some of the small tire theory in racing big tires and vice versa?
You can. As far as the 36-inch tire goes, like it doesn't mind a little bit of separation. It's a really good tire. Now you obviously can't separate it like a true radial. But it in our big tire experience, like the one thing that if I only had one sensor to race a vehicle with, it would have to be a G meter. G meter is end all be all. It is direct correlation to acceleration. So backtracking into the tire is the fact that if you try and stick a tire, and the main goal of what we're doing is drag racing and accelerating the vehicle. So we want to try and run that as low on wheel speed as possible. Like, why spin the tire? Like, we're not in the game spinning tires. Like, we're in the game of physically accelerating a vehicle. So if you can, the harder you can stick a tire, I don't care if it's radial or a slick or a tractor tire or whatever, what have you, a big knobby paddle tire and some sand. Anytime you can try and run it as low on wheel speed as possible to try and drive the tire and get it to actually create enough traction to move the vehicle and get the G meter moving and happy, the happier and the faster the car is going to be, or the vehicle is going to be. Wheel speed, like traditionally, everybody's trying to make wheel speed, but we're in the game of acceleration and trying to beat the car next to you. So if it boils down to tradition versus math and knowing, like, the G meter, if it's higher, it's accelerated quicker, it's moved faster, and its numbers are probably better on the ticket. So trying to run a vehicle as low on wheel speed as possible is I feel like the key to accelerating the vehicle, and no matter what tire it's on, tractor tire, small tire, big tire, whatever tire.
Right. And I mean, the key to that on a big tire, obviously low wheel speed, but there's a fine line between low wheel speed and keeping the tire round.
There
That's
definitely
the
is.
never ending battle that we seem to fight.
You can run that big tire over and it is upset.
Yeah.
And you can put it on fire and it is upset.
Yeah.
But there is definitely, I feel like, more tire management to the bigger tire stuff, as opposed to the radial tire stuff. Radial tires are very, I feel like, forgiving. It's typically the surface.
For the most part, if you can get the radial tire off the line, you can just feed it all the power until it straight up runs completely out of traction. Then you're done. But you don't have to worry about keeping the thing in shape very much. And that part of it is definitely very nice. But I think
it is very cut and dry.
Yep. You're either doing really good or you're doing really bad on a radial. But yeah, at Indy with the S10, we definitely seem to kind of be like treading all over that fine line of keeping the tire round or not. Like
Oh yeah.
one pass, the thing would go down, and the next, we didn't really change anything, and then it would shake. And so I don't know. I really think that back to the whole Liberty thing, I really think that's going to help us get the gear ratio that we need out of the hole to hopefully be able to control the tire better and keep it round. So we'll see how that
Yep.
goes. But I
Yep. And who
definitely.
knows? And who knows? It may not. It may not work out.
Mhm.
Um, unfortunately, well, I wouldn't say unfortunately, but I would say in our line of work and what we do, like all of this is testing. Like it's
Mhm.
educated guessing.
Right.
Nobody. You don't have a textbook to um, Cummins diesel drag
Right.
racing and radial tire racing. There's no textbook, so you're writing
Mhm.
the book. As far as trying to understand what needs to happen,
Yeah.
it's all taking information from past and history and
Mhm.
just trying to apply it now to new theories. And
Right.
on paper, it sounds like Liberty behind, in the new
Right.
car is definitely fun and the go-to. So,
Mhm.
um, but there is always that caveat of, well, maybe it won't
Right.
work out like it was planned,
Mhm.
um, but unless you try it, you just never know.
Yep. That's for sure. So I'm kind of running out of educational or good things questions to ask. So how about we just end it by making fun of Ryan Milliken?
All right.
No, Ryan's
Oh,
good people, but we always definitely once it comes to racing see things a little bit differently sometimes, but
yeah,
always give each other a hard time. So I figured
yeah.
he's probably out there like, I don't know, having dreams about the green car or something.
He's having dreams of his blue car because
Yeah.
he's wanting it to work so badly, and like it's been a struggle with the leaf spring stuff
Yeah.
um, on the new blue car.
Right.
The leaf spring stuff has really just been a real a real struggle bus for that car. So it's actually a 10 soldier race cars right now getting 4 link.
Yep.
So uh,
I saw some
on
pictures of that.
onward and
Yeah.
upward.
Right. I saw some pictures of that the other week, and I'm pretty excited to see that thing get done and get back out on 4 links because it's really it's one less variable that we already have one hand tied behind our back with the diesel. Like, why tie the other one behind our back with a leaf spring yet? So I don't know.
Yeah,
That's kind of my theory. I kind
I
of get it in a way, but
we all get it. Like we
yeah.
all understand doing it on leaf springs, being
Mhm.
fast. Kudos. But
Right.
guess what? Like I told Ryan, nobody's standing at the end of the racetrack giving you a trophy and a check
For a
because
leaf
you
spring.
showed up on leaf. Yeah. Nobody's patting you on the
Uh,
back because you did it on leaf spring.
right.
So,
Yeah.
it would be one thing like if there was like an award at the end of the year, hey, you're the last guy on Leafs. Congratulations. But there's not. There's no
Yeah.
paycheck. Like
Right.
we so
It's all about
um
going fast
yeah,
at the
I'm
end of the day.
basically
Yeah.
like I'm excited to get to see the car back out there. Like
Right.
yeah, I get the difference in you guys, extra G,
Hmm.
SS, and
Right.
SNS, and the difference in approach on certain things, but
Hmm.
you guys still run the same Cummins
Right.
based, engine kind of
Hmm.
program. So granted, two different engine builders. I get
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah. No,
there again, different.
I saw that
Mhm,
offset 4 link that they're trying in it, and I never
mhm.
understood the theory behind that. But then watching the 10 soldiers had put a video out of how that works, and that was pretty intriguing to me. Obviously, it seems like there's certain applications that works better than others, but the way that moves your instant center as your suspension moves that's pretty cool. I never really paid much attention to that.
It is very cool, but there again, it is very, very, very shock dependent.
Mhm.
Because so shocks are just timers.
Mhm.
Shocks will either speed up or slow down how quickly the suspension is allowed to move. The four link is going to dictate where and how far it separates,
Mhm.
and the rate of separation is dictated by the shock. So in the unequal link four link, kind of stock style, upper bar shorter than the lower bar. Um, it definitely, as the instant center, as the car separates, it is going to drive instant center into the car
Mhm.
a lot more aggressively than, say, an equal link four link, like an 18-inch upper bar and a 20-inch lower bar. Instant center length and height, really, the height will change a bit, but the length is not going to nearly change. But
Right.
in the unequal length stuff, it'll get with it.
Yeah.
So it will be very shock intensive. It would be a very
Mhm.
shock intensive program.
Yeah.
Um,
Which I
but
think they built it with the option to be able to still go to the equal length bar if the offset
bingo.
doesn't work super well. So they definitely have a
Yep.
little bit of testing to do to figure that out. But I said I was done, but now that we talk about this, I remember like that offset setup kind of piqued my
Mhm.
interest. Do you think by chance that's something that might work on a four-wheel drive truck that's really light on the back end? Like I always feel like you never quite have the weight back there to really we've talked about trying to separate the rear of a four-wheel drive before, but it
Mhm.
just seems to, I don't know, fight tire shake, or not tire shake, more bounce than anything, because it's almost
Mhm.
like you don't have enough weight transferred back there and can't keep it back there. I don't know. Do you think that's at all something to look into on the four-wheel drive stuff, or not? Are you not?
No,
No.
no. It's all going to be based off of how long the vehicle is.
Hmm.
The trucks, like you're talking about, extremely long.
Yeah.
You put a short upper bar in the top of one of those things, and it's gonna get upset,
Hmm.
and it's gonna do it quickly.
Okay.
Whereas the long four link bars create enough leverage to get the front end moving. Like that's the
Hmm.
biggest thing is making sure that your four link bars are long enough to get the front end picked up and get it moving.
Okay.
The sole reason for the back of the vehicle to do anything and to create traction is to move the front end. Like it is creating traction by picking up and rotating the front end around the back of the truck.
Hmm.
So with shorter bar up top, it's going to use that leverage a lot quicker and it's going to be a lot more aggressive. Whereas you really don't need it with a
Hmm.
vehicle that long and that nose heavy. Like you need the long bars
Hmm.
for the long pull and
Yeah.
to get a lot of leverage on them.
Works for me.
Yeah.
So sounds to me like we just need to keep working on torque converters and power management, and see if we can keep going faster.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Torque converters. Yeah. Yeah. Let's not go down that rabbit hole, I guess.
Oh, well, cool. Yeah, it's been good chatting with
Yeah.
you, and I think
Likewise.
we're probably gonna call it a wrap for today, but I'm sure we'll have our chances to pick each other's brains here in the near future. But thanks again for joining us, and we're going to call that a wrap for today's episode of Firepunk Friday.
Awesome. Thank you, big guy.
Yep, we'll see you.